Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time we're going to kind of jump into this whole machine learning thing with TensorFlow.
Oh, yeah.
You guys sent this in. Empowering tomorrow's innovators. Why hands-on advanced machine learning with TensorFlow mastery is the ultimate key to success in 2025 and beyond. And really got us thinking about how much machine learning is changing everything,
It really is amazing how it's become so important in like every industry.
Yeah, and the article makes this point that, just knowing TensorFlow, it's not like a bonus anymore. It's like, you got to know this stuff.
Yeah, if you want to keep up.
Exactly. So get ready, because we're going to look at why TensorFlow is such a big deal, how people are using it, and what it could mean down the road for everyone.
I think a good place to start is with how TensorFlow even got to be so big. I mean, Google only released it back in 2015.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And now it's basically the go-to for like building and using these crazy complex machine learning models.
It seems like it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
From those voice assistants that can understand what we're saying to the things that recommend videos we might like.
Right.
Even self-driving cars are using it.
Yeah, totally. And I think a big reason TensorFlow blew up so fast is because it's open source, meaning anyone can, use it, change it, help develop it.
Right.
And that's led to this huge global community that's always pushing the limits.
It's kind of brilliant, right? That open source thing, it's like this never-ending cycle of people making it better.
Absolutely.
But this article we're looking at, it really stresses that to really get TensorFlow, you got to have hands-on experience. Why is that so important?
Well, think of it like learning to play an instrument. You can read all the books and watch all the videos you want, but until you actually pick up that instrument and try to play it, you won't really get it. The little things, the challenge is what you can actually do with it.
So you can't just read about TensorFlow and expect to know it. You got to really get in there and wrestle with it.
Exactly. Hands-on training is what gives you that real understanding, the ability to solve problems, and the confidence to use TensorFlow on real-world stuff, like those self-driving cars we talked about. Imagine having the skills to be part of that.
Oh, wow, that would be incredible. So let's say someone jumps into a hands-on TensorFlow program. What kind of advanced stuff would they be learning?
Well, you dive deep into deep neural networks, which are like the brains behind all these crazy AI applications we see, like convolutional neural networks or CNNs. They're really good at analyzing images. So think like facial recognition or when doctors are looking at medical images.
Oh, so that's how Facebook knows who to tag in pictures.
Yeah.
Or how doctors can find a tumor in an X-ray.
Exactly. Then you have recurrent neural networks or RNNs.
Okay.
And these guys are amazing at processing data that comes in a sequence like text or speech. So things like language translation tools, chatbots, even those predictive text suggestions on your phone, those use RNNs.
Wow. So RNNs are why I can have a halfway decent conversation with my smart speaker.
Pretty much, yeah.
So CNNs are for images. RNNs are for language. What else is there?
Oh, there's a lot more. But another big one is autoencoders. These are really good at finding anomalies, so things like spotting a fraudulent transaction or figuring out if a piece of equipment's about to break down before it actually does.
Like a super detective looking for anything suspicious.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is all starting to sound really complicated. How do you even wrap your head around all this?
That's where the hands-on part is so important. It's one thing to read about this stuff, but when you actually build, train, and test models yourself, that's when it really clicks.
So it's all about applying what you learn.
Exactly. And there's no better way to learn than by tackling actual problems. And that's where programs like those boot camps we mentioned can help. They give you the chance to work on projects that are like real life scenarios. So it's not just theory, it's practical application.
So they help you connect all these complex ideas to something you can actually see and work with.
Exactly. And while you're doing that, you develop this problem-solving way of thinking, which is super important in AI because it changes so fast. You're always having to adapt to new problems, new algorithms, new ways of doing things.
Right. Okay, so we talked about these deep neural networks, but there's got to be more to TensorFlow than just knowing what types of networks there are, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a ton of techniques and tools for making your models the best they can be. One of the most important is hyperparameter tuning.
Hyperparameter tuning. That sounds kind of scary.
It might sound complicated, but it's basically just fine-tuning your model to get the absolute best performance. It's like tweaking different settings, these things called hyperparameters, to optimize how well your model can learn and make good predictions.
So it's like finding the right settings on a camera to take the perfect picture. You're adjusting everything to get the best possible result.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And one of the most useful tools for hyperparameter tuning is this thing called TensorBoard. It basically lets you see what's happening inside your model track, how well it's doing over time, and spot areas you can improve.
Sounds like a pretty important tool for anyone working with TensorFlow.
Hmm.
What else is really important for getting good at this stuff?
Another big one is understanding how to use distributed training strategies. As models get more complex and the data sets get bigger, you need ways to speed up the training process. Distributed training basically lets you split the workload across multiple machines, sometimes even hundreds or thousands of them.
So it's like having a whole team of computers working together to train the model faster.
Exactly. And we're really just scratching the surface here with TensorFlow. We haven't even touched on model explainability and interpretability, which are crucial for knowing why your model is making certain decisions, especially in sensitive areas like healthcare or finance.
Yeah, you don't want some mysterious black box making important decisions without knowing why.
Exactly. And then there's this whole area of edge and embedded ML, which is all about running TensorFlow models on smaller, less powerful devices like smartphones or even tiny sensors in your home appliances.
So that's how our phones can do things like real-time language translation or recognize objects.
Right. TensorFlow Lite is a slimmed-down version of TensorFlow that's made for these smaller devices.
Wow. So we're getting a sense of just how versatile TensorFlow is. But I got to admit, my brain is getting a little full.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in for sure. But I think the main takeaway is that TensorFlow isn't just a piece of software. It's a whole ecosystem, a set of tools, a community, and a whole new way of thinking about how to solve problems using machine learning.
And it's changing how we live and work super fast. In part 2, we'll look at some of the ways people are using TensorFlow, from revolutionizing healthcare to shaking up the world of finance.
And we'll talk about how learning TensorFlow can open up a whole world of opportunities for you, our listeners, in 2025 and beyond.
So stick around. So welcome back to our deep dive into TensorFlow. In part 1, we kind of started looking at like the core ideas of TensorFlow and just how powerful it can be. It's crazy to think how much machine learning is already affecting our lives.
Right?
Sometimes without us even noticing.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of everywhere, from like the recommendations you see online to the way our phones understand what we're saying. It's all powered by machine learning behind the scenes.
Right. But like we've been talking about, with all this power comes responsibility. We can't just blindly go along with all this tech without thinking about how it could impact society.
Definitely. I mean, we've seen this with other big tech changes, right? Like the ethical side of things always seems to catch up later. It's on us to think ahead about the potential downsides and make sure AI is developed in a way that benefits everyone.
How do we actually do that? What can we do to make sure AI is used for good?
Well, I think transparency is a huge thing. The more we understand about how these models work, the better we can spot and fix problems. For example, like if we know why a loan application was denied by an AI, we can check if there were any biases in the decision.
Right. So it's about making sure these systems are accountable and fair. So how do we get to that level of transparency?
There's a lot of research going on right now focused on making these AI models more interpretable. Like, think of it as being able to look under the hood of a car and actually seeing how all the parts work together.
So instead of just seeing the output of the model, you can actually see the reasoning behind it.
Exactly. That's crucial for building trust in AI, especially as it becomes a bigger part of our lives.
Okay, I get that transparency is key, but it sounds pretty complicated to actually do. But I want to shift gears a bit and talk about the good that AI can do. We hear so much about its potential to change healthcare, fight climate change, improve education, and more.
Absolutely. And TensorFlow is like right at the forefront of a lot of this progress. Like in healthcare, it's being used to create algorithms that can look at medical images like X-rays and MRIs, and they're super accurate, sometimes even better than human experts.
That's incredible. So these algorithms can help doctors catch diseases earlier and more effectively.
Exactly. And that can make a huge difference for patients. There are even cases where TensorFlow models have spotted patterns in medical data that doctors missed, which can lead to new discoveries and maybe even life-saving treatments.
So it's almost like TensorFlow is giving doctors a superpower, helping them be even better at what they do.
I think that's a great way to put it. And it's not just about diagnosis either. TensorFlow is being used to create personalized treatment plans, speed up drug discovery, and even predict which patients might need to go back to the hospital, which helps hospitals manage their resources better.
It sounds like it's totally changing the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
What about other areas where TensorFlow is making a difference?
Well, in finance, it's used to catch fraudulent transactions as they're happening, which saves millions of dollars every year. It also helps banks and other financial institutions manage risk, make smarter investment choices, and even personalize financial advice for their clients.
So making our money safer and our financial systems more efficient.
Right. And then there's natural language processing, where TensorFlow powers everything from those chatbots that answer our questions online to the amazing language translation tools we use all the time.
It's pretty wild to think how much of our digital world is shaped by these algorithms now.
It really is. And like we talked about earlier, access to these tools is becoming more and more open. It's not just for the big tech companies anymore. Anyone with a computer and the internet can start learning TensorFlow and playing around with it.
That's what's so exciting about all this, right? Anyone can become a creator, an innovator, a problem solver with these tools. But having the tools is one thing. Knowing how to use them is another thing entirely. In part 3, we're going to get into the practical side of things, how you can actually start learning TensorFlow. And we'll share some resources to get you started.
Sounds good.
Stay with us. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on this awesome journey exploring TensorFlow, right? From how it became like the big name to how it could like totally revolutionize different fields and even our own lives.
It's been pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it really has. But now for this last part of our deep dive, we want to focus on you guys listening. You know, we've talked a lot about what TensorFlow can do, but we want you to feel like you can actually use it too.
Exactly. And the best part is it's probably easier than you think to get started. There are tons of resources out there, and the AI community is super helpful and welcoming.
So let's talk specifics. If someone's totally new to all this, where should they even start?
Well, the TensorFlow website itself is actually a great place to start. They've got a whole section just for tutorials, and they're designed for people who might not have a ton of coding experience.
Oh, so you don't have to be like a coding expert to dive in.
Nope, not at all. They walk you through it step by step. From the basics of Python to building and training your first TensorFlow model.
That's good to know. What about those interactive tutorials you mentioned before?
Oh yeah, those are called collabs, and they're awesome because you can actually run TensorFlow code right there in your browser. You don't even have to install anything on your computer. It's a great way to get a feel for TensorFlow and try out different things.
So it's a very hands-on, learn-by-doing kind of thing.
Exactly. And if you're more into like a structured learning environment, there are a bunch of good online courses on sites like Coursera, EDX, and Udacity.
And some of those are even free, right?
Yeah, a lot of them have free options, or you can audit the course for free to see the materials. And if you're really serious about an AI career, there are those boot camps we talked about, which are more intense and focused.
So you've got choices, from doing it yourself with tutorials to taking a structured course to those intense boot camps. It really depends on how you learn best, what you're aiming for, and how much time and energy you can put in right.
Yeah, exactly. And regardless of which route you go, one of the most important things is to connect with other people who are learning TensorFlow too. You know, share your struggles, ask questions, work on projects together.
That community aspect is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can learn from each other and help each other out along the way.
Absolutely. And there's so many ways to get plugged into the TensorFlow community. Online forums, local meetups, even international conferences where you can meet other people, learn from the pros, and show off what you've been working on.
So it's about finding those spots where you can nerd out about TensorFlow with people who get it.
Exactly. And don't be shy about checking out open source projects. TensorFlow is all about open collaboration, which means you can see the code, help make it better, and learn from some of the smartest people in the field.
That's amazing. It's like having a backstage pass to the most cutting-edge AI development. But as you learn more about TensorFlow, it's important to remember it's not just about the technical stuff.
You're right. It's also about having that mindset of always wanting to learn more. The AI field is constantly changing. New algorithms pop up, new applications come out, and the ethical questions get more and more complicated.
So learning TensorFlow isn't like a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's a journey of always learning and growing.
Exactly. Stay curious, keep trying new things, and always be ready to learn and adapt. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to go about it.
It's all about finding what works for you, right? Like maybe you want to build your own projects or contribute to open source stuff or dive into research or even teach other people what you've learned.
Exactly. And I think as you explore the world of TensorFlow, you'll realize it's more than just a piece of software. It's a tool that can help you actually make a difference.
It's a tool that can help us solve tough problems, create cool new things, and do stuff we never thought possible.
And in the end, it's a tool that can help us make a better future for everyone.
Well said. So we've come to the end of our deep dive into TensorFlow. We hope you're leaving this journey feeling inspired and ready to start exploring on your own.
And remember, no matter where you are in your TensorFlow journey, the community's got your back.
So jump in, experiment, And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to create that next amazing AI application that changes everything. Until next time, keep those brains working.